So welcome back, everyone. It's fabulous to have you back. We've got a really interesting and important topic up next. We've been interviewing first-time boaters for quite a long time, and one of the repeating questions that they tell us is, how do I know how to stay safe at sea? So we decided to engage and introduce to you Cameron Ferguson. He's from Asia Pacific Yachting in Hong Kong. He's the director of Asia Pacific Yachting, and he's the chief instructor. And he is the man that is here to tell us all about how to stay safe at sea. So a very warm welcome to you, Cameron.
Thank you. Welcome to this session on how to stay safe at sea. So we've been running this Hong Kong business since 2013, and we are heavily involved in the safety at sea. It's not just within my own business, but also for the Royal Hong Kong Yacht Club and other departments in the government within Hong Kong.
Fabulous. That sounds great. So one of the, the pedigree and the credentials that you come with is the Rya Accreditation. So maybe some of the people that are watching don't understand what Rya is. So if you just tell us briefly what Rya is, Cameron, before we jump in.
Certainly. So the Rya is the Royal Yachting Association. It's a UK organisation who look after the boating in the UK, and that's all forms of boating, whether it be sailing or motorboating and dinghy sailing, and it covers just about all the spectrums. They have a number of training programs, from shore-based programs to on-the-water programs, in teaching people everything from just beginning the sailing career or motoring career right up to commercial licenses if you want to do this for a job.
Okay, great. And is that global?
It is global.
Okay.
They operate in about 50-something countries around the world. So yeah, a UK-based organization, but it's been expanding around the world. And it's kind of seen as a de facto standard to work to. In all the surveys that have been done by the yachting organizations, it always comes up, not just number one, but way above number two.
That's fabulous. Okay, so, it's a real privilege to have you here and representing Rya, Cameron. So let's dive right in. So the number one question is, how do I stay safe at sea?
So staying safe at sea, just moving on, is all really about your passage. How do you achieve a safe passage? How do you go from A to B safely? And there's four main competencies that we have to look at in order to achieve that. So crew competence is the first one.
Okay.
Vessel preparation, passage planning, and passage execution. And if you get those four elements correct, you have an extremely high likelihood of having a safe passage.
Okay, so it's the sort of the 4 steps to a safe passage. Okay, that looks great, and you're going to go into these in more detail. But before we do that, what are some examples of what happens if you don't get these 4 things right, Cameron?
Sure, I've picked out just a few local examples of these things that have happened in Hong Kong and reasonably recently. This first one here I have. This is a simple navigational error. It's going the wrong side of a navigational mark.
Okay.
So sometimes the errors can be quite small, but kind of devastating if you end up in this situation.
Yeah, okay.
And then I've got one here, which again is a very recent one. This is your classic example of a skipper just asking too much of their crew. So in this case, tacking too close to the shoreline. Tack failed, boat went back through the wind in the original direction, and there wasn't time to do another tack, and so the boat ended up in the rocks. Okay. This has ended up with a helicopter rescue of the crew off the rocks.
Wow. Okay.
And then this one here is the keel of a yacht that hit a very well charted known rock in Hong Kong. It's not got a physical mark on it, but it's certainly on the chart. And the skipper and helmsman was just distracted by something else, and weren't watching where they were going, and slammed straight into it, causing extensive damage to the yacht, just about writing it off.
Wow. Okay. So if we look at the 4 areas, of skipper and crew competence, vessel preparation, passage planning, and passage execution, which is the first one we're going to dive into first, Cameron?
Well, let's look at crew competence to start with.
Okay.
So, of course, crew also includes the skipper in this.
Okay.
So it's the entire crew. So really training is the one that sticks out, is pretty well top of the list. And we don't want to be in this situation here of unconscious incompetence. There's basically 4 levels of competence, and this is the very bottom one. It basically means you don't know what you don't know. It's the most dangerous one. And I do see quite a lot of this around. So let's at least move to the next level, which is all to do with conscious incompetence. So at least you understand what you don't know. So
Exactly.
at least get to that point. So improving that level of competence through training. Yep, the RYA, we'll talk about that more towards the end of the presentation, have got various schemes for taking you through a training scheme. And other organizations do as well. And there's some good ones out there, not just the RYA, but do be careful. Go and check out any organization you want to work with and make sure they do deliver quality before you part with your time and money. So examples of training you do, shore-based training. So navigation and radio courses, knowing how to fix your engine at sea. These are all good things to be doing and get that shore-based training done. But at the end of the day, nothing quite comes like getting the practical training.
Okay.
So formal practical training, yes, our way delivers a set of courses for that. But in addition to that, the skipper-led training, it's so important.
Okay.
So getting your crew together, and this doesn't have to be in a very formal way. It can be done informally. It can be done as a bit of fun. But looking at your boat handling, how you handle the vessel under sail, under power, emergency procedures, make sure you run through them. You'll actually learn a lot by doing it in a fun way. Don't let's get too serious about this. So make it enjoyable for the guys.
Okay, so just let me clarify what you're saying here is clearly there's the shore-based courses, which is important. And then there is training courses for the practical. But are you also saying in addition to that, then the skipper should provide some training before you go on the boat? Is that what you're meaning?
It's kind of all the time. It's an ongoing thing. It's not something you just do once and then walk away from.
Right.
And you can introduce it during a trip. Just a little, right, guys, let's have a quick look at how we would do a galley fire.
Okay.
And so just pull that one out. So you don't have to run through them all in the one trip. You just every now and then pull the one out and just run through them. It's amazing what you learn by doing them as well. And they're very informative.
Okay, so does that sort of that's a nice overview of the skipper and the crew competence, yeah?
Well, a little bit more on that one, because you've got also the skipper's ability and experience. Now, this is just something you can't be taught. You've got to get out there and actually do it. An example for you is expanding that experience envelope. I see too many people getting stuck in a rut. They've got their boat on the pontoon, they leave the pontoon, they go to the same anchorage, they come back to the same pontoon again, and they repeat this over and over again. And then when something doesn't quite work out the same way, weather conditions or breakdown of an engine or something like this, it all goes not so well, because they're kind of themselves really stuck in a rut. So I strongly recommend get out with more experienced sailors. Even though I've been doing this for 40 odd years now, I still love finding somebody who's got a different angle on it, and I never stop learning. So this applies to absolutely everybody. And keep up with the latest best practices. I was introduced for a new method using the life sling from an American company, and wow, it's very simple what they've come up with, but it transformed the way I do my man overboard procedure now. And so I've just changed that, and I've adopted a different procedure. So you never stop learning in this business. I think that's really important to understand.
Yeah. Okay. I like what you said about getting out of a rut. I think that's a very good way of putting it. A very good way of putting it. Okay, so that's skipper and crew competence. That's one of the 4 areas. So the other ones that you talked about at the beginning were vessel preparation, and then of course passage planning and passage execution. So I suppose we're going to look at vessel preparation now, are we?
Yeah, sure. Let's have a look at vessel preparation. So there's 3 main elements to the vessel preparation. It's the equipment, maintenance, and the operating procedures. So let's just work through those. So when it comes to equipment, it's all about ensuring that your vessel is set up for the kind of voyage you want to do. Now, is it inshore or offshore? Is it day or night? So have we got the right setup here? And do you know how to use that equipment you got on board effectively? It seems to be getting harder, not easier, unfortunately. Communications equipment is a good example. It's one of my areas of expertise, and well, it's just expanding so rapidly with all these different devices, and it really does. I find people's head can't get themselves around as to what these individual devices do and what's the pros and cons for individual devices. Common
Okay.
questions I'm asked.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
we won't go
So
into
it's
that
the
today because it's
technology,
quite
isn't it?
complicated.
It's
Yeah,
the
it is
technology issue. Yeah. Yeah, for
indeed.
sure. Okay.
And make sure you know how to use it, because simple things like these days, nobody's listening in channel 16 on radios anymore, VHF. It's not required by law. And so you need to be able to make a DSC, digital cyber call, to that vessel over there. So your vessel's trying, looks like, that's a bit worrying. Is he going to run me down? The only way of speaking to him on the bridge is by doing a DSC call. Can
Okay.
you do it? I find a lot of people can't.
Okay. Okay. Interesting.
And then navigation equipment. Can you use that AIS you got on board, that nice plotter with AIS? Can you set up the CPAs, so the close to point of approach warnings, so it tells you if you've got a collision danger? Can you use the radar you got on board? That device, I love radar, but wow, it does take a bit of practice
Right.
to be able to use that equipment effectively.
Okay.
And then when it comes to safety equipment on board, you could carry all this stuff in the back of the boat or downstairs, whatever, but can again use that effectively. Have you got the right equipment, the right life jackets, tethers, fire extinguishers that can actually put out an engine, for example? You've got a hose that will fit in the fire port, things like that. So, so that's the kind of equipment side of things. But let's not forget about the crew as well. So their protection. Clothing, sunscreen, hats, all that sort of thing. You get enough water on board, enough food on board. There's quite a lot of elements to think about here to make sure the boat's properly equipped for the type of voyage you're going to undertake.
Okay. Okay. All right. So that's the equipment under the vessel preparation. Now you mentioned that there were three. So what's the next one?
So we've got maintenance, and here we're really looking at, is the vessel well maintained? Now this takes discipline, and for sure some owners are better than others at this.
Okay.
I see quite a variation. I use a set of operating procedures to run my boats, and this is one for looking after the servicing equipment. There's a lot of stuff on board these days that's got dates on it, either service dates or expiry dates, and the only way of managing that is actually by documenting them. And one of my pre-voyage checks is to look at the sheet to make sure everything is in date for the voyage.
Okay.
Same with the engine. Is it properly serviced and maintained? Just like you do your car. So why don't you do the same with your vessels? It's a question I'm often putting to owners. And when it comes to resale of the vessel, it's pretty good to be able to hand out all these servicing sheets that you've completed as well. So that's a real positive when you're passing the vessel on. It gives people a real feeling you've been looking after this vessel.
Indeed.
You've had it.
That's so important, isn't it? Yeah.
Tools. Again, a frequent question I'm asked is, what tools do I carry? Well, the easiest way to do it is do the job. You certainly should be able to do a raw water impeller change at sea, a diesel engine filter change at sea. These are things I've had to do a number of times over my career, and they've got me out of trouble. And if you do the job, you realize what tools you need. And don't go mad with your tool selection, just have enough to do the job.
Okay.
And it also comes with spares as well. I go on some boats with almost no spares, or indeed none, and go to other boats that are just full of spares. And it's getting the right balance that's really important here. These are a couple of boxes, for example, that I have. One is for the main engine, the other one's for my generator. It's a 47-foot yacht, but that's it. They're relatively small boxes. So you don't have to carry a huge amount of spares, but let's make sure we carry the right spares.
Yeah. Okay, great.
And then when it comes to faults in the boat, document them immediately. So you should have a simple notebook in where you document the date, the fault, is it important, what you're doing about it, and when it was fixed. And as soon as something's go wrong, you grab that book and you write it in there. Never do that, oh, I'll do it later.
Okay.
You won't, you'll forget, and that's probably the thing that's going to come back and bite you at some point.
Okay.
And then when it comes to knowledge, yeah, you might have somebody who goes off and does your servicing of your engine, for example, for you. But do understand what that servicing entails. And one of the examples I'll give you. So I say to people, well, make sure when someone does the servicing your engine, get them to put everything they've changed, the fluids and the components, on a table somewhere, and then you check through it to make sure that actually all the jobs were done. For example, did they change the fine fuel filter? One I often find it's missed off. So don't just assume that your servicing agent does everything they're asked to do. You should have some knowledge of it.
Okay, yeah, that's very important, isn't it? And I think this theme has been repeated a bit with people that we've been talking to about don't fully rely on them. You need to check. It's like trust but check, isn't it? So
Yeah.
that's the same thing that you're saying here.
And by you having that knowledge as well, it means if you have an issue at sea, you know what to do about it as well. Yeah. So you should have that level of knowledge. It's not like a car you just drive in. When it breaks down, it's not so easy to pull over on the side of the road.
Yeah, exactly. And call the AA. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's two of the three things under vessel preparation. What's the third one?
We've got operating procedures, how we actually operate this vessel.
Okay.
Now, I really would encourage people to document their important procedures. There's some real great advantages to this. By documenting, it makes you think about a procedure, be it man overboard or heavy weather or etc. Towing, how do you tow your vessel? It's not something you want to make up at the last minute. So by documenting it, it makes you think through that process. It ensures that you have a consistent approach of what you do. You don't keep flip-flopping around the place. And you can capture improvements. For example, that MOB, man overboard method I've just changed. I've captured it, updated my process, and that's now what I do. I'm not going to go back to what I did before. So I've now locked it in. And you can send them off to your crews, particularly in a longer voyage, before they actually go. And so they can read through and understand how you operate the vessel. So that gives them a really good warm-up. And I laminate the most important ones, stick them in a folder, and put them in the chart table. So we can pull them out nice and quickly when we want to use them.
That's a really good idea. Some good tips there. Okay, so that's vessel preparation, those three areas under there. So we've covered the skipper and the crew competence so far. The vessel preparation. What's the next? What's the third of the fourth one, Cameron?
Okay, so let's move on to the passage planning. So the first one here, I'd say, is allow sufficient time for planning. It's seldom wasted. So give yourself that time to do the planning. Don't put yourself under pressure. Have a process. Now, the process I use is the SOLAS regulations. So these are the International Convention for Safety at Sea. And it even applies to the leisure market. This is not just a commercial requirement. Everybody is mandated to do this. So if you follow their process, you're going to be on the right side of the line. So the process goes along the lines of weather. Well, let's get the weather forecasting. It's pretty obvious, but you need to think about this when you're out at sea as well. How do you get your weather forecast when you're away from mobile phone coverage, for example? Yeah. So make sure you understand how to do it and practice that as well. Okay. I like to write my weather forecast in the logbook. It stops people keep asking me, what was the weather? Okay. And also with current and tide, I do the same as well. Okay. And after a while, they get the ideas. I'll go and look in the logbook rather than keep borrowing Cam to find out what it is. Then vessel limitations. So you need to look at the vessel and decide what its limitations is. Is it suitable for the voyage you're about to undertake? And the same applies with the crew as well. Is your crew experienced enough to undertake that voyage? And then document the route. So ideally do this on paper charts. Those, as long as they're up to date, and they should be, that's the authoritative documentation. There's very few leisure vessels have got a proper ecosystem or something like that for doing electronic navigation. So really the charts is where we should start, and it gives you a nice big window, a picture of what you're actually trying to achieve. Okay. And also when it comes to the close quarter battle, so you're leaving port, coming into port, or going through a narrow area, make sure you do pilotage plans. They're very different from passage plans in that pilotage plan is often in a notebook, ideally waterproof, and we do a detailed little map. So we can have it upstairs and stop having to run downstairs to the chart all the time. And then you can move that information across to an electronic chart plotter, which for sure I use a lot. But the paper charts I still see as the number one resource. Okay. When it comes to navigational dangers, which is the next item to cover, I like to circles around the navigational dangers in my chart, and that makes it easy for me to highlight to my crew where we need to be particularly careful.
Okay.
And then have a contingency plan if you've got a longer voyage. So, you know, make sure as well that you have a pilotage plan for getting into that contingency planning place. It's not something you want to make up at the last minute when you need to enact that contingency plan. And the last one here is give information ashore. So you're going to tell people, you know, where you're going from and to and what your timings are going to be, so they can keep an eye on you as well.
Okay,
And so make sure that plan is documented.
okay.
Use standard chart work notation. You know, everybody should be looking at the same piece of chart work and understand it if we use a standard notation, not something you made up yourself. And the big one on here as well for me, even though I've been doing this for an awful long time and I'm a professional navigator for racing boats, is that have someone check your work. I can't emphasize that enough. It's really important. No matter how long you've been doing this for, get somebody to have a look at it, see if it holds up.
Okay, okay. So the question that I have around this, is this what you learn when you do the RYA course?
Yes, certainly it comes in for sure in the theory courses, and we absolutely teach the SOLAS method when we're doing our practical courses. All of our crew briefings are done using this way for the planning part by the skipper and by his delivery to the crew. It's always using this process.
Okay. So is there a particular course on passage planning, or is it part of a bigger course?
It's the RWA has two courses. It's a day skipper shore-based course and the coastal skipper yachtmaster offshore theory courses. So those two theory courses have an element of this in them to different levels.
Okay, great. Okay, good. All right, so there's that point number 3. So are we up to point number 4 now, Cameron?
Sure. Let's execute that passage that we've done also this work for. Now, this can be anything, guys, from a short coastal passage for a few hours during the day, or you could be going across an ocean. It doesn't change. The process doesn't change. So really, a few days before I do a voyage, no matter how long it is, I'll go and check the boat out. Let's make sure the boat is in the right place before we get people all arriving. So things you know we're looking at is you know, servicing status. Is everything up to date? Have we got enough fuel for the voyage? It's not something you can fix at the last minute. You know, gas, life jackets, etc. So I've got a checklist for this. It means I don't miss something, and it de-stresses the whole process. You know, I'm not trying to, God, what was that thing I should be thinking about? No, just work myself through it. It doesn't take long at all. A few minutes, and I know the boat's where it should be.
Okay.
And then on the actual day, I've got a startup procedure as well. So sorry, just come back that one. So we've got a procedure I work through as well. So make sure my seacocks are open. You know, I've done engine checks. I've done my safety equipment is on the back of the boat, etc. Again, by working through that process, I know when I drop those mooring lines that the boat is where it should be, and I'm not running around the place trying to sort some things out that I've clearly forgotten as we should have been done before we left. Again, it's all about just de-stressing that whole process.
Yeah. So that's the pre-voyage part. Can I just ask one question here? So these forms and checklists that you use, are these part of the RYA course, or you know, where does a new boater get access to these checklists?
So no, they're not part of the RWA course. We talk about doing things like this, but as far as the actual list is concerned, they really are unique to each vessel. Yeah, okay. Sure enough, the headings are very similar, and for certainly some of my the processes that we do are similar. But certainly I give these out to all my students to allow them to amend them and use them on their own vessels.
Okay, great. That's it looks really, really very helpful. Okay, so what do we have after pre-voyage?
Right, let's look at the crew now. So we've got the vessel sorted out. Let's make sure the crew are sorted out. Okay. Please know your crew. Ask the questions. So has there any medical issues? So I always ask people medical issues, and I say, if you don't want to discuss it now, please make sure you talk to me before we actually set off on this voyage. You know, asthma, diabetes, etc., claustrophobia. There's a number of issues, and you really should know about them. It shouldn't come as a surprise. Yeah. When it comes to swimming, for goodness sake, ask that question. Can you swim you know, in clothing 50 meters? Are you a reasonably strong swimmer? If the answer is no, they're going to be wearing a life jacket. It's as simple as that. We had a tragic accident in the harbor here in Hong Kong just a few months ago, where somebody fell off a yacht, couldn't swim, and drowned.
Oh, wow.
And it really is unforgivable. These
Yeah.
things shouldn't be happening. So
Right.
ask that question,
Okay.
please. Make sure it's a big asterisk on your checklist.
Okay.
Seasickness. You know, when it comes to short voyages, you can get away with seasickness. I mean, being, you know, badly seasick on a boat, but a longer voyage, that's going to be dangerous. So you would never set off on a long voyage without sailing with somebody beforehand. On a shorter voyage, in some lumpy weather, get to know whether that person is going to be capable when things get tough.
Okay.
And then assign crew responsibilities. This is absolutely essential. I keep this sheet you see here on my bulkhead so everybody can see it all the time. And for the longer voyages, let's send it out before the voyage so everybody understands what their duties are. Yeah. I only fill in as much as necessary. You know, if it's a short trip for a lunch stop for a few hours, I'm just going to put names down there and one duty, which I'll talk about in a second. For a longer voyage, I'm going to fill the whole thing in. So things like you've got to, and the one thing you must do is always have a mate. There's always going to be a second in command. Somebody's going to take over if the person in command is incapacitated for some reason. So that's essential. And when longer voyages, for sure, emergency duties, some man overboard duties, abandoning vessel duties, and a watch system as well. I use the numbers on this sheet as well. That's your life jacket number. So it's actually a cup number. Using numbers is very effective. And also teas and coffees, and who takes sugar and milk, another essential component.
Yes.
All in one sheet.
That's great.
And a watch system as well. So a watch system is important to have if you're going to do a longer voyage to make sure everybody's well rested. And then we move on to the safety brief. Now, again, you've got to adapt that for the type of voyage you're doing. If you're just doing a few hours with some friends, you want to keep this really short and sharp. They don't want to do an hour-long briefing for a voyage that takes 2 hours. So, but there's certain things you absolutely got to cover. You know, things like at least one other person knows how to start the engine. So if you as a skipper to fall off the boat, they can start the engine and come back to you.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
There's been some interesting issues with that over the years, and tragic ones as well.
Yeah.
Use of the windlass, it's a very dangerous piece of equipment, and often the time you want to use that anchor is right at the beginning of the trip, because often if an engine's going to break down, it'll do it in the first 10 minutes, and that's just when you're leaving the harbour. You don't want to be rushing at something like that. It can be extremely dangerous.
Okay.
And talk through any method procedure I think you should be talked about, at least very briefly, man overboard, for example.
Okay, that's great. Oh, yeah, life jackets. Yeah.
Big one for me is life jackets.
Okay.
Make sure you fit life jackets to people.
Okay.
It's one thing having life jackets on board, but the modern life jacket has to be fitted to the individual. So get them out there, get them fitted, do a very quick brief on them, and then I will usually give them to the user to say, right, you stow it, it's yours for the rest of the trip. But at least now we know it fits them. So we did have to grab them quickly. They're going to be able to wear it.
Okay. All right, so it's pretty comprehensive, all right. It's sort of certainly starting to open my eyes, Cameron. So what else do we have on passage execution?
Let's brief that crew. Okay. So you've done all this work, you've got your crew on board, about to start your passage. Let's tell them what they're doing. So first of all, start with a big picture. Okay. You know, we're going to go from here to here. Keep it nice and simple. And then all you have to do is take that briefing you've already come up with and follow the same headings you did for the SOLAS planning process. So your weather, your tide, your current, the vessel limitations, crew limitations. When it comes to the route, this is where you don't get bogged down. We want to keep this briefing short and sharp and keep our crew engaged. Yeah. So talk about the first leg. That's the one you're about to do, but then just very, very brief the other legs, because it's all in the documentation. It's on the chart in front of you, or what other documentation you've done. People will not remember the bearing of and distance from every leg to every leg. So why read them all out? Yeah. So just give that flavor of the plan, and so they can also see where they find the detail as you're going along. Okay. And then navigational dangers and contingency plans. So they're fully briefed on actually what they're about to do.
Okay, so now we're ready to head off, are we?
Yes, at long last. We can drop those mooring lines and get on the way.
Okay.
So, en route,
Okay.
think one step ahead. Really, at least one. Two, ideally even three, but at least one step ahead all the time. And another one as well, I find one of the issues is skippers and mates commanding the crew. This doesn't have to be done in an authoritarian way, but it can be done very relaxed. But I find one of the most powerful things you can do is give a name, give an action, and then monitor. That's so important.
Yeah.
Make sure they're actually doing what you ask them to do.
Yeah.
So this is not barking out orders.
Right.
Done in a really friendly way, but give a name, give an action, and monitor. And if you use this simple process, you will find you'll command that crew so much more effectively.
You certainly do see, the barking, happening
Mm.
quite a bit, don't you? And I know that people need to, listen to and follow, but it must make you feel not so good if you're being almost disrespected. Is that true?
Very much so. One of the interesting things about skippers who shout at crews, it actually is an indication of a lack of competence and confidence.
Okay.
The reason humans start this is because they're starting to get out of their comfort zone. They really are stretching themselves too far, and that's when the shouting starts.
Right.
So it's an interesting way to look at it. If you are being shouted at, is that thinking, my skipper is now starting to get out of his competence zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe help you understand better as to what's going on.
And it also, when different people react differently, but I know when I get shouted at, it actually makes me incompetent because my
Yeah,
brain kind of goes.
shuts down.
So that sounds pretty dangerous to me.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
So let's just not go there. Another thing I love to do in boats, I use hand signals all the
Okay.
time. So, that is up or faster
Okay.
or raise the sail or raise the anchor.
Yep.
That's down, that's
Okay.
stop, that's finish. These are crane driver signals, and they're
Okay.
really useful for signaling the boat. So you don't have to shout.
Yep.
You can do everything and it makes people look at you more as well.
Okay.
So that's another useful thing about using hand signals. You get far better communication. How many times you've been in a boat when somebody's been shouting distances something out to you
Yeah.
while facing forwards?
Yeah.
You can't hear a thing.
Yeah.
So why not just use signals, fingers?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So yeah, using hand signals are very effective and keeps that noise level down. Next one I've got for you is be flexible. Just because you got a plan, it's not absolutely rigid and set in stone. I was in the military for many years, and we have a simple saying: "No plan survives contact with the enemy."
Okay.
Plans need to stay flexible, and so you got to keep reviewing your plan and make sure it's still working for how things are going. The weather conditions, are they what you expected or actually not working out quite right? Is your crew maybe not coping with it as well as you thought they might? So make sure you stay flexible. Don't be rigid in that plan. Be very, very wary of skipper, navigator, crew fatigue. Can be extremely dangerous. I've learned my lessons in this over the years as well. So yeah, it's a dangerous one.
Okay.
Another one I love as well is have a check navigator. I am a professional navigator, but I will always have somebody on board that vessel who's looking over my shoulder and checking what I do. So never think, I am in charge of it all. It's all my responsibility and
Okay.
nobody else knows what I know. Absolutely not. Get somebody you can trust on board to have a check of what you're doing all the time and get them to ask you questions.
Yeah. Okay.
And always know where you are. Seems so simple, but let's face it, the reason you run aground is because you didn't know where you were.
Right.
You'd always be able to walk downstairs and say, guys, I'm here. Never any ifs, maybes about it. So keep that simple principle in your mind and you shouldn't go wrong.
Okay.
And then when you arrive, report your safe arrival. That was in your plan. You informed somebody ashore what you were doing. So tell them, yep, we're back, we're safe, everything's good. And then run through your close down procedure so that when you go back home at night, get into your bed, you're not thinking about, oh, damn it, I forgot to do X, Y, and Z. And that's, again, why I like these processes I work through. It just, again, takes that stress off, that worry off. And I know when I leave the boat, it's sorted.
Exactly. So is that the fourth one completed?
Yeah,
We're en route.
indeed.
We've got back safely. We've told people that we're back. We're
Yeah,
sitting back having a
absolutely.
relax.
Here we
Yep.
are. There's your 4 steps. So, work through those, and you should be in a good place and really enjoy what you're doing.
So, Cameron, is there any one of these that you see that is responsible for more responsible for mistakes and,
Mm.
crises than another?
I think the interesting about it, no is the answer.
Okay.
All 4 of them, I see people making mistakes with.
Okay.
So they're all equally weighted in my book.
Okay.
You have to do them all and do them all well in order
Okay.
to have that central safe passage working for you.
Okay. All right. So how do I learn? How do I learn all of this? What process would I go through if I wanted to learn all of this? How would I do? How would I do that?
Well, from the RWA side of things, we've got some fantastic publications. I now really, really believe this. And they've been doing these for many, many years, decades now. And it's at the core of what we have in the RWA. So, yeah, you can get by the hard books, copy from RWA, from me, whatever. But actually, the ebooks, which you buy direct from the RWA, is what I would recommend.
Yeah.
You also get extra animations in the ebooks. You get videos in the ebooks.
Okay.
And the best thing about the ebooks, it doesn't matter how many I put onto my iPad, it doesn't get any heavier.
Yeah.
And that's to me, it's probably its biggest bonus.
Yeah.
So that's the publication side of things. So, and those ones I've got up there on the screen are probably the ones that come to my mind as being particularly useful and cover the stuff that we've been talking about today.
Okay, great. And then if I wanted to do the courses, I give you a call, do I?
Yeah, so RWA schools, if you go on the RWA website, you can find other RWA schools around the area. So they've got a kind of a search tool on there. There's not that many schools in Asia, unfortunately. So I cover a lot of Asia, get a lot of people coming from all over Asia to me. But we do the shore-based courses. Now, most of these we do online, actually. So the navigational courses we deliver as online courses. And I sit there monitoring the students and seeing how they get on and provide assistance as they go along. So they're not there alone doing it. We do the Vhf course, which is an online course to do the studying and the practice on a training radio. It's a simulator. And then actually come and do an oral exam with proper training radios. You can even press the red button for calling for distress. Seasickness course, we do this in Hong Kong. It's one of the courses required for the offshore races that we're heavily involved with here in Hong Kong under the World Sailing. And 50% we mandate have to have done this course, and we run those on behalf of the Hong Kong Sailing Federation here in Hong Kong. And diesel engine course is great for getting your hands on and actually doing things. So this is a classroom-based course with engines and radio courses, first aid courses, all these things. And then, of course, the good old practical courses when we get out there on the water and put the stuff into practice. Competent Crew is a 5-day course. Yep, get your real grounding. And I recommend that not just for complete beginners, but also for people who are maybe done a bit of sailing, but still need to get those fundamentals in place before they do their day skipper course. Day skipper course, I reckon it's the hardest course we do. Because suddenly you have to be in command of the vessel, the navigation side of things, the safety side of things, the mooring, docking, undocking, and all the other things that go with it. It can be overwhelming for somebody to try and tick all those boxes unless they've got the fundamentals in place. So I say, don't rush the day skipper. It's also a de facto charter license. Once you got that, you also get International Certificate of Competence, which is, the two of them together are pretty well recognized throughout the world.
Okay.
And
what size boat is the day skipper done on? You said that you are navigating that, or you're operating that boat. So what size boat is that?
So the RWA mandate, it must be under 50 feet.
Under 50.
Under 50. So I've got 2 training vessels. So typical training vessel, I've got a 38-foot Beneteau. That's your classic RWA school boat. But I actually operate my Bavaria 47 quite a lot as well, which is a really comfortable boat with air conditioning and all the modern facilities on board, generators and what have you. So, I run day skipper on both those boats, and I find day skippers can handle it perfectly well once they're shown how to handle a vessel properly under engine and sail. And then you can progress to the higher level ones, up to your Yachtmaster courses, where you can get a commercial endorsement, commercial license, and you can get paid for doing the sport. There's nothing I enjoy more than getting paid for what I love to do.
So important. That's great. Okay. So is that all the courses, or are there other ones as well?
Those are the main
Yep.
courses that we do. Our website, you can go look at them on there. We have them
Yep.
all listed up. And we also provide other services around the outside of this,
Yep.
which is safety advice. So a lot of what we've been talking about today, I will go into an owner's vessels and have a chat with them, help them get the processes sorted out, look at the boat, tell them where we're lacking, when things need to be sorted out. I'm also the chief scrutineer for all the offshore races in Hong Kong. So I have a team of scrutineers. This is not part of my business. It's part of what I do with the Hong Kong Yacht Club. And we go out for free and we go and check all these boats before the offshore races. So it's something I'm doing just all the time. So we also do private instruction. Get quite a few people come who don't want to do a 5-day course with people they don't know and actually do any private instruction. So we also cater for that market as well. Passage planning, something else we do for people. Some examples is I ran the passage planning and execution for leg 5 of the Volvo Ocean Race, the last one.
Wow.
Very, very complex, getting us to where from A to B through extremely difficult channels, a lot of hazards on the way, and making sure that we got there safely and got back safely. I've recently done helping somebody prepare their vessel and do a solo sail from Hong Kong to Australia, to Cairns.
Gosh.
Really,
Wow.
and not a particularly experienced yachtsman either. So it was challenging work, but through his hard work and us, we achieved that arduous upwind passage for him so successfely.
About how long does it take to do, that particular plan? How long would it take? Must be hours.
It takes a good 5 days to come up with a plan as detailed as that. It ran to quite a lot of pages because all the phases need to be covered, all the contingency plans, all the weather routing. You can even see the little chart here, all the little yellow lines on there, for example. That's all the shipping routes. Okay. So it's really important to know when you're crossing shipping channels so you can watch out for big ships trying to run you down.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a whole lot of factors to be done for that as well. Rolex China Sea Race and the Vietnam Race. These are run by the Hong Kong Yacht Club, in which I'm heavily involved in the committee for as well, for safety, for routing, for weather. Of course, we've got typhoons in this part of the world, often called in to give weather advice about whether it's safe to actually proceed or not. I'm also a professional race navigator. I love racing. I have done all my sailing career. And one of the things I always say, we never mix racing and cruising. You keep the two completely apart from each other. When I go cruising, I go cruising. When I go racing, I go racing. There's two different heads.
That's what I was thinking. It's like split personality, I suppose.
Absolutely. Completely different sports in my view. And so I also do things like race software such as Expedition, KND, which is the performance analysis software. So the thing you see here is actually some current routing information that we use, and also weather routing as well. So those are the kind of other services we also do.
Fabulous, fabulous. Well, so it certainly sounds like there's a really well-constructed path to move through. Like, I haven't seen a presentation like this before. I've done my boat license, but I haven't really been into this whole course area. But I can absolutely see how the answers to staying safe at sea you've so well outlined them, and it must give huge amounts of confidence to people to know that you can actually do this and get the desired result. Yeah,
for sure. And you don't get there in a one go.
Yeah.
This is something you work your way towards. So as long as you've got that, at least that conscious and competent side of things, you understand what you haven't done, and you just work your way to that. Don't try to achieve in a one go, just work your way along. So I hope we've enjoyed this short presentation on how to stay safe at sea, and I'm happy to answer any questions by email if you want to drop me a line.
Great. Oh, that'd be fantastic. Yeah, we're actually doing a Q&A after the event, in a few days. So we'll certainly keep that in mind. But Cameron, I just want to say, such a big thank you for pulling this together. It's been enlightening, and I'm sure it's going to help thousands of people feel as though they're going to, know exactly how to get to a level of confidence where they can feel safe at sea. So on behalf of everyone at the Expo and the people that are going to come through in future, I just want to say thanks so much, Cameron. It's been really great.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you again. Bye for now.
Goodbye.